This one is, this is from the Catholic News in 1957. This is on the Good Shepherd Sunday. The statue is taken down and placed on closer to the pilgrims. The sanctuary, the festivity became disorderly and sexually charged. Inside, the priest and his parishioners moved the statue across spatial temporal bounds inscribed in conformity with the bounds of religious orthodoxies between Catholicness and non-Catholicness, or the otherness, which was most graphically represented by the body and spirituality of Hindus. The transitions activated new yet innate abilities of dress and also the caretakers' performance of ceremonial dressing. First, having felt more and more exposed to obscene gaze and graze of the men, the caretakers started hiding the statue's body surface deeper underneath thicker gown and robe and multi-layered undergarments, and covering its face, the only exposed body parts. Now enclosed rather than decorated, the statue's body has embodied and reproduced the chastity and normative controlled female sexuality. Besides, multi-layered undergarments not only shield the statue's body from violent acts of seeing and touching, but also conceal the ways and process of dressing as well. For fathers and the male parishioners worked to more distinctly consecrate the sanctuary and conceal the rituals from debauched externality, using barbed wires and temporary high fences. But then, chapel did not have a closed space that could be served as a dressing room for La Divine. The female caretakers must have avoided stripping the statue naked. Second, the dresses and performance of dressing and dressing have endowed the single material body of the statue with antithetic divine selves, which are equally authentic and efficacious in the context of distinct religious traditions. They have marked the compression of the transfiguration of the spatial temporary mobile bodies of the statue from to the Catholic self as La Divine. This ability of dresses have become even more important after the present chapel was constructed. This is the present chapel. The contrast placement of the statue using the high altar had problematized the tactility or the touchness of the statue, in keeping with anticipated liturgical reforms by Second Vatican Council. This chapel, which was completed in 1961, installed a shrine abandoning the high altar, which faced and stood at the same level as the pews. Since then, up to now, the statue has never been celebrated on the Holy Thursday and Good Fridays, although its placement has undergone several changes. The placement of the statue for the two faiths, the Catholic faiths and faiths on the Good Friday, has remained differentiated, which reproduce the spatial definition of the sanctity of La Divine, but the removal of the high altar has permitted the direct physical interactions to take place between the statue and non-Catholic devotees, as in the 19th century. By the early 1970s, Catholic devotees became increasingly concerned that statue would be molested or even carried away. As if to respond to concern, then caretaker, Mrs. Eloise Ramdin, commenced to tailor and fit the statue up for what she called the second dress on Easter Sunday after the Hindu pilgrimage was over. When interviewed, Mrs. Ramdin recalled an apparition of C in a dream which had caused her to start this new service of ceremonial dressing. This is her explanation. According to the long-serving acolyte, the Hindu custom of squirting the statue with oil had dwindled as a result of the church's repeated warning against it, which meant which means that the statue's dresses did not actually become covered with oil during the Kuri fete, as much as they had until the early 20th century. But the rearrangement of where she was to be placed following the reconstruction of new chapel had increased the concern among the caretakers and parishioners in general about any potential for violation of the image. So on Easter Saturday in 2003, the day after the Kuri fete, Mrs. Ramdin changed the statue into a new second dress, looking up at the statue now located within shrine and respectively dressed up for Easter Sunday Mass. She stated with a sense of fulfillment and relief. Now she happy go see her son. That is actually she said. Therefore, dresses and performance of ceremonial dressing and undressing have reconfirmed and reproduced the sanctity of La Divine, concealing the statue's body from violence of seeing and touching and influence of non-Catholic devotion that potentially compromises the Catholic spirituality and liturgy. But depending on the material attributes of the statue as tangible and transportable, and stereotyped femininity as changeable with clothing and makeup. The consecration of La Divine has activated another subconscious process of cultural production. First, the dresses and performance of dressing have embodied inviolate immaculateness of La Divine, but at the same time, they continue to arouse more desire to learn what lies under the dresses, which urge the caretakers themselves more carefully hide the statue's body. This complication between belief and practice has constantly sexualized the statue's body, which has significantly engaged the sociality and spirituality of the devotees. The sexualization of the statue has genderized the manners in which the statue is treated and approached, thereby has constrained the exercise of the patriarchal institutionalized power of the Catholic Church over this awe-inspiring and lucrative religious object. Parish priest has invariably had final approval for the custody of the statue, but he has not been able to exert his full authority. For example, the Father Martin Soju, who sent the statue for the restoration, that idea was encountered a strong opposition from one of the caretakers. And then she offered Father Silju an opinion that the statue should be restored at her shrine by the hands of the female parishioners in the church. While the statue was gone for the service, Father Silju had actually a long period of ill health because, according to this caretaker, he approved the renovation against her suggestion, which caused La Divine to show all her flesh in the presence of the male archivist outside her shrine. While my fieldwork in 2003, Mrs. Ramdin granted my request to observe and assist her in dressing the statue. On the day before the Siparia fete, she carefully ensured that there was no one in and around the chapel, and then invited me to remove all ornaments and jewelries. Mrs. Ramdin told me, but before starting to strap the statue, she told me with a good-natured laugh, "Excuse us, but please step out and wait outside." She said she's too shy. In about 20 minutes, with Mrs. Ramdin's permission, on behalf of La Divine, I returned to the shrine and found the statue already clad in the new gowns and robe. Mrs. Ramdin then started telling me a story about unfaithful man who attempt to peep out undressed statue while pretending just to wander around the sanctuary with a camera. In her storytelling, the man was anonymous, but another parishioners, and then also the Sister Colomba, the principal of the Catholic Girls' School, later confirmed that man was a well-known anthropologist from England. I know the name, but I keep it anonymous here too. Mrs. Ramdin actually fiercely mouthed off to that man and turned him out of the chapel. And Mrs. Ramdin explained to Sister Kromba that that man has tried to see the mother dressed off. This episode of Inquisitive Scholar shares the kind of a main theme with an oral tradition very prevalent today among the parishioners in Siparia. In the most favored version, a man in his desire to discover the stuff of which the image of La Divine was made went to the altar and knelt and held the dress and raised it. There are different versions with unfaithful Spanish Catholic, Hindu Indian, and also Afro-Creole men. But at their conclusion, always the man earns punishment for his immorality. Most often, he felt pains in his eyes and lost his sight. But another occasions, he also fell from the ladder and broke his spine. Turning either visionless or immortal, or beaten out of the sanctuary like famous anthropologist by Mrs. Ramdin, man's desire to learn what really lied underneath layers of the dress was and would never be suffused. Although it is not known if Mrs. Ramdin consciously chose the anthropologist version, her storytelling translated my presence as an ethnographer at an attraction to the statue dress into yet another episode to substantiate the devotees' oral belief in exposed chastness of La Divine, more than warning against my father pride. Concluding the arrangement of the statue, Mrs. Ramdin thanked me for my concern for La Divine's bashfulness and submitted, "No worries, you'll be given the knowledge." Today, a group of female caretakers get the statue changed within the shrine, which was carefully covered with a large, thick cross in order to conceal the undressed statue from the pews area. I actually have lots of pictures while they're changing the dress. They allow me to take pictures, but on the condition that I'm not showing to the public. But while I'm taking those pictures, they ask me to help them to carry the statue down from the ledge to the floor. I accidentally fell from the ladder. They laughingly and jokingly said I was punished. So afterwards they said it's maybe better for you to leave. It's not stop taking the pictures. Maybe you will be punished more. So in the charge of the statue's dress and I'm going to finish for some. In charge of the statue's dress and performance of dressing, female caretakers have consciously and subconsciously wielded major influence on the spirituality of the devotees, shaping how the statue is actually seen and actually touched. The statue has visitors all year round, but she attracts the largest crowds on the days of the feast because only on these occasions the statue is moved out of her gated shrine, which enables devotees to have direct and intimate bodily engagement. Occasionally, against the warning from the church, pilgrims, either Catholic or Hindus or other, strive to reach out to touch the statue's face. This is a warning. I mean, just it's always in the church. And enclosing the body of the statue, dresses have constituted a significant point of bodily engagement between devotees and this tangible divine presence. So this is a Hindu's, this is the pilgrimage on the Good Friday, and this is Good Shepherd Sunday. The people anyway strove to reach out and try to touch, and then if possible they try to touch the exposed parts. That is, exposed parts is only face, so they try to touch the face. But except for the face, is all bodies is enclosed. So the point of touching now is constituted by those dresses. And then different dress and performance of undress and difference have sanctified La Divine, creating authentic divine manifestation other than La Divine. But at the same time, they have incorporated these antithetical manifestation of the single body of the statue into the relation of circular reference for each other's legitimation. There is a cliche among the parishioners in Siparia. She goes out to see them as their mother. Our mother, that is La Divine, and their mother is non-Catholic mother, any divine manifestation other than La Divine, with the creation of mutually exclusive yet contaminous mothers, the symbols, practices, and conscience of competing ethno-religious origins, which would have otherwise remained isolated, have homed a micro-community, and the dynamics of Hindus and non-Catholics' transgressions and Catholics' responsive politics of identities are integral to the reproduction of this community. Within this community, the followers of the respective mothers must simultaneously reproduce their ethno-religious authenticities while engaging in the continuing practice of mixing with their counterparts. The mothers will often retain their virtue and efficacy to cure sickness if they remain separate within an integrated whole. Catholic and Hindu non-Catholic devotions have never shared a mother, single mother, but they have shared mothers, the most contentious, nationally recognized ethno-religious origins in Trinidad. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tsuji.
Thank you for a very interesting presentation. I was curious actually about one of the slides, slide number 18, which had a lot of text, and I was wondering, is that the caretaker asking, describing an interaction with the mother herself? She's as if
Mrs. Ramdin,
yes.
I asked her why she started making the second dress. As I told you before that, the caretakers changed the dress just once a year, but she increased the frequency of the ceremonial change. And then I asked why, and then she said the statue appeared in her dream.
Okay.
And then in apparitions, that apparition has asked her to make a second dress because she's not happy going to the Easter Sunday Mass with dirty dress. But the important is when she appeared as Indian lady.
Yeah.
And then I still struggling to find out why. But it's a most purified stereotype kind of a body of the women. It's like in Trinidad context, like a kind of Indian women. I mean, and then also statues material indefinitive. I forget for it, kind of an in-betweenness of the statue's material body. For example, I asked them to describe the statue's physical features. They always saying, she has a long black hairs like an Indian lady. She has a copper-colored skin like an Indian lady. So they try to explain the features of the statue using the stereotyped body features of Indian women, against the fact that it's the kind of congregation is a majority of the congregation either European descent or African descent. So I'm striving to try to figure out what kind of relations between this statement, also what she has been doing, and also dress, and also that's the kind of things. I mean, just her practice and her discourse. I mean, I try to find out some relations, clear relations between them.
Father Serju was the priest who sent the statue to be.
Yeah.
Was his illness only for the period that the statue was away?
According to his explanation, after the statue came back, he gradually healed. but he actually confirmed that fact. You see, he actually ill. So, he of course has refused that kind of explanation. See.
And I know Sharon is doing work on this as well, Sharon Syriac. So we should tell people that she's a PhD student who's also in cultural studies studying. So maybe you could pick up. But the question of I like the early discourses, if you like, between Christianity and what was happening there. And the fact that Osenda was saying, I like his thing about canalizing water as opposed to repressing it, is an interesting way in which he was seeing how do you appropriate it. But the question that I actually want to ask, and I don't know if anybody's answered, what would have made, there's a thing about since 1876, right? I saw one of your statements since 1876. This would have been maths, 45 minus, 1845 minus 76 is enough years. 21? 31 years. 31 years into indentureship, right? And so already the statue would have been something that they gravitated to. Understand that Indians would have been rural and located, but there's already an attraction. So the first thing is, have you come across any set of discussions which would have, in the text or otherwise, that would allow us to explain it? I mean, I have a suggestion that I think in the context where Indians would have been used to temples with statues, this would have represented an icon and something physical. But there were obviously other reasons. So if you've come across anything like that. The second question is that as the discourse begins, it starts with Kuli Fet. So you move it away from religion almost. There's a notion of how the newspapers and the Catholic Church is seeing it not as a religious event, but as a fete. It reminds me of how the British treat carnival with the, with Notting Hill Carnival. The early entrance of people into another culture. How is it perceived, and how is it perceived as transgressive? So it's kind of two questions, really.
I have been working to find some written documents, exactly when and how they found the power of the statue and it started there. It's it's not really successful, but it's one document suggests that it's a first. They came with their not masters, but their employers of particularly the cocoa estate employers took them as kind of attendant, because those days is kind of also they work off. So they just followed their employers, and sooner or later they've also found some curative power as well. So after the employers stopped coming to their own, the Good Friday, they continue to come, their own devotion. That is just one possible explanation, but it's not really powerful enough. It's not convincing. I think it's they started making a pilgrimage much earlier, like 1850s. Of course, we don't have any written documents. Why during the 1870s this event is more often documented? Because the Catholic Church started having the interest in it. So we have to give a close attention to the politics within the Catholic Church at that time. For example, in 1964, the first Dominican father became the first Dominican Archbishop came to Trinidad. It's Luis Gonin. It's arrived with a group of Dominican preachers. And then after that, until 1967, Archdiocese of Port of Spain completely dominated by the Dominican order. 4 archbishops, 1 French, 3 Irish. And then for Dominicans, it's a Marian devotion is particularly important within the Catholic Church. So in the 1870s, the actions taken by the Archdiocese are kind of a contradictory. On the one hand, they try to exclude the Hindu people from La Divine, but on the other hand, they try to promote La Divine as kind of a powerful medium for the conversion. 1874, just before this Dominican father is visited to Siparia, the new mission founded in East Dry River. It's called the Siparia Hill. This is a statue which is erected by the Dominican father called Marie-Francois Ribon. This statue used to stand in East Dry River in a mission called the Siparia Hill. They tried to attract the Hindus already resettled in the port of Spain. They tried to convert them into Catholicism. After that mission is defunct. This statue moved to Aruca. And after Aruca, that moved to Lopino. And after that, that statue is disappeared. Someone has explained that statue is taken by some parishioners. They just hide it in a private room. But another point I want to make to draw the attention, the year of this ordinance, 1917, this is the same year Our Lady of Fatima is appeared in Portugal. And then from 1912, we have Mount St. Benedict. So Father John Pius Doring and also the abbeys from the Mount St. Benedict tried to promote the La Divina Pastora as kind of a patroness of what they call the Curie mission. That is actually, you can find the files under the name of Curie missions in Archdiocese House. So a lot of things happened at the same time, 1870s. The Archdiocese came under the control of the Dominican Fathers. An increasing number of indentured laborers did not go home, but decided to stay in this country. And also, still anti-Catholic sentiment is very strong among the Protestant missions. They always attacked the Marian devotions as one of the example of the corruption of the Roman Catholic, like a popery kind of corruptions. So all those elements make a conference to make these happen. So we have to release this case from as a very kind of ideological kind of view between just Hindus and Catholic, just simply Hindu and Catholic, but we have to look at within the Catholic Church and also within the Hindu community as well. The relation is much more complicated, and then no one really consistent, always inconsistent. That's a very, very paradoxical. So from even today, it's not so many people in the Catholic Church really understand that La Divine is not just by name for La Divina Pastora. La Divina Pastora and then what people call La Divine is exactly different things, because La Divine already passed through a lot of conflict and then becomes kind of a reservoir of experience and knowledge. That is a historical creation. But the people still believe today La Divine, as a Hindu is attracted to the La Divine. Okay, we can promote La Divina Pastora as the good medium for evangelization. But it does not really work, because the La Divina Pastora and La Divina is kind of a completely kind of different things because of the historical background. We have to contextualize. A lot of oral legends circulating in Siparia. People believe that La Divine statue used to walk. And then a lot of legends come from 19th century. But the statue never walked from Siparia. It always walked to Siparia. Sometimes walked from South Oropuchi, sometimes from Port of Spain and Mount St. Benedict. And these three localities, South Oropuchi, Port of Spain, and Mount St. Benedict, is the competitors within the Catholic Church over the control of the statue. So using these regions, what Siparian Catholic try to claim is this statue belongs to us. It's not belong to entire kind of Catholic community. As long as you admit our custodianship, I can provide to that your help. But other than that, because as last year, the statue circulated around the island. The Archdiocese requested the Martin Tsuji to send just the statue, not person. But the Siparian Catholics strongly opposed. We have to attend the statue because we cannot trust. We have to attend and change dress and arrange the statue always 24/7. We have to attend the statue. So, you know, the embeddedness of the statue and the close relations between the people, livelihood, and economically, materially, immaterially, spiritual life of the people in Siparia. We have to understand. Without those understanding, discomfort is just continue to happen.
I was just looking at the parallel between that and the Santa Rosa statue and the Caribs up in Arima, because they still continue their procession and their devotions and so on as well. So there are still remnants of that sort of thing, but not because a lot of the East Indian community also take part in the Santa Rosa thing as well, right? And a lot of them live around there, and they do make their contributions. So that is, I suppose, the Eastern version to the Siparia version, you know, that sort of thing, because it's still ongoing.
I just want to try to add to what Dr. Professor Mohammed was saying. We have, as you said, the earliest account is in 1851. It was when the statues, when Hindus started coming. Although it was 1851, and although I interviewed Raviji and asked why it is that Hindus started coming, and he said that given the fact that this was just 6 years after Indianship started, they had no temples of their own, and they would have seen this black statue in procession. So they would have just joined the procession and started walking along, and because they found something to hold on to. So that is one possible explanation. And the other thing I wanted to just add, in this year, 1917, when this ordinance was made against the Indians coming, that was also the same year we had the Shouters Prohibition Act, not so? The ordinance. So then, what was going on at the time to make, because you had the Shouters Ordinance in the same year that we had this thing. So what was going on at the time as far as religion and as far as,
organizing religion.
Exactly. So that to me is an important point to note about the cultural context and the historical context at the time.
I was just wondering how you've been affected by the research. Because it's
Affected?
So, yeah, your spiritual self. Because we talk about spirituality and sometimes it's left out, right? Like, what is the material effect on us as researchers engaged in this very intimate and private experience of people, and they're sharing with you, right? And I just wonder how you've been affected through the research.
That's a good question. Wow.
We brought him here.
Well, that's one of the reasons. Well, it's, and then that question is always asked by the people in Siparia too. Why you keep coming back? You're Japanese, it's not Catholic and it's not Trinidadians, but you keep coming every year during the devotions to this statue, and why? And it's a good way, but also kind of as I told you, like a warning too. It's why you're so inquisitive to Our Lady. But I don't know. It's what kind of implications on me? Take it a little while. I have to sleep with that question.
Is it because of the difference?
That is a good to think about.
Is it because of the difference? Just trying to help you think. Difference of the way with Japanese religions may be structured. So this is presented and alternative?
Mm.
Maybe a curiosity.
What I think this case is a kind of a dramatic representation of what's happening everywhere in Trinidad. This is not just kind of a unique case. That's a kind of, I want to see this case through which I want to understand what I really want to understand how this society possible. Because I'm from Japan. It's characterized like very homogeneity, of ethnic homogeneity. And then I was being educated as the cultural homogeneity is the most important for the social integration. There's no conflict because we are so same. And then at the age of 24, I came to this country and started working in the Japanese embassy. And then immediately I start asking questions myself, how this society possible? It's so different, religiously, culturally, racially is so different, but I always see some sort of very strong cohesiveness in this country. And then how that cohesive come from. And then I believe this society is so coherent, not because lack of conflict, but so many conflict.
Conflict.
No one can really ever could be established hegemonic position in this country. Even Europeans, we call it the Europeans, but French and English are always fighting. And then Chinese and Portuguese came. And then also indentured, like released and start integrating society. So always the different conflict crisscross, and then sometimes very unique associations is created, even they not loving each other. It's kind of a temporary, but that is a great example is the relations between Hindu community and Catholic community. That is why I just attract to this case. Maybe through which I expecting through studying this case, maybe I can understand kind of a secret of this society's cohesiveness. The piecing hued, someone's anthropologist put, or like a cultural mode of conflict suppression. The Trinidadians knows historically and culturally how to deal with the conflict, but as long as that conflict based on religion and ethnicity, you guys excellently deal with. But what I'm really worried about is now class conflict is a more like resurface. Always existed, but it's a kind of a class conflict, kind of a still new to deal with. So as Trinidadians, like a struggle to find out way out of those new type of conflict. But there's that is just part of my implications.
As you talked about the whole ritual around it, and again how you talk about with women and the whole, is it that the space of La Divina has moved beyond any notion of well, there's no pure religion anyway, that pure religion, what we can think of as cult, almost as a cult, kind of cult space with devotees, rituals, a kind of set of rules being formed around it. You know what a cult is really?
It's curious as to the use of the word cult.
Yeah. I was kind of wondering because it's moved beyond the religion, but there's so much of a following. And one of the things about Hinduism, really, if you look at it in any country spread, is that they really embrace the pantheon of any god or goddess that lie around. Yeah? So the embrace of it is well, not any. I think they're a bit more Catholic than that. But anyway, but so that is understandable. But I see I see La Divina as representing a really interesting. I mean, I like your point about it almost becomes a metaphor for the crucible of creolization as a process in Trinidad. It gives you an example through which you could work through all the dynamics of it. But beyond that, what is it becoming? Because like in Haitian, in Voodoo, you have the Erzuli Danto. Yeah. So Erzuli, the whole worship of Erzuli, what is surrounding that. So La Divina is a character in her own right, owned by no religion again. Maybe that's what I was thinking about it. That it stands outside now.
It's now a Trinidadian manifestation.
And then around it you have all these rituals, like the dressing and the undressing is a...
Well, if someone asks me what is this, cult or religion, I always answer, this is a lived religion. Because of the definition of religion is still never really confirmed, or it's always controversial. So lived religion is the best way to put, just general terms for that. And then my analysis and argument is influenced by the book by Robert Orsi, The Madonna on the 150th Street, that deal with the statues and also Italian American community in New York. He's a kind of advocate of the terms of the revealed religion. He always separate the term revealed religion from popular religion. He's very critical to the term, the popular religion. Popular religion is not, he said, is not significant and appropriate. The revealed religion is more appropriate. And then he explained better than I do. So it's just the introduction to that book is helpful if you have interest in these kind of field of the study. Robert Orsi, O-R-S-I, Orsi, yeah, Orsi, Robert Orsi. I think it's a lot of subsequent studies on biblical religion is started from his book.
I think that's a nice way to describe it, actually.
On that note of lived religion and the question of how is this society possible, I say thank you to Dr. Tsuji for sharing his work with us.